Hi and welcome back to Purple Collar Life. Today's video is a little bit different. We're talking about what it's like to live in a rural area with a water well. So for 23 years we've had this water well that supplies water to our house. Now if you live in an urban area with like a city water system, you probably have no idea, or maybe have no idea how this works. So let's walk through how a water well system works in a rural area with a house like ours.
When you live in the woods like we do, and you build a house in the middle of the woods, and there's not city water, what you typically do is you have a professional driller come out and drill a water well. This is our water well. This well was here actually before the house was even here.
Hey, Billy's pushing dirt off to the side, trying to level up for the house. Looks like he's buried Chad's water well. Okay, there's the water well, so he didn't bury it. You can see the stakes right there and back there where the front of the house. There's Billy running the bulldozer. He's pushing all the topsoil off, trying to grade it down level. There's piles of soil there.
We had the well put in first to make sure we had good water. This water well, and you won't be able to see down in it because it is too dark down in. Likely.
So like I said, over 20 years ago, we had this water well put in. It is 74 feet deep. So that's how deep the drilling rig drilled down until we got enough water where we could not even bale it dry. There was so much water coming in. Now we do live in an area with a lot of springs, and the springs feed the groundwater feeds our well. So to talk to you a little bit about how this worked, we had to drill down until we got to the water. Like I said, we were at 74 feet. A lot of times people go a lot deeper. I think my parents' well is almost 200 feet deep, and they are just down through the woods from us. We know people that have water wells that are 400 feet deep. So 74 feet is pretty shallow, but it's great that we reached good water and a good quantity of water at that depth. Now let's talk about where we are today, 20 some years later. So a couple weeks ago, we started having problems with our water well, or with our water system. We'd turn water on in the kitchen and it would sputter and we wouldn't get good pressure. If the washing machine was running along with anything else, we would totally run out of water for a little bit of time. So that really started to worry me. I contacted Flick Drilling, who's actually the company that 20 some years ago put this water well in, and Eric is great. He's super knowledgeable, helps us out anytime we need anything. A few years ago, he put a new pressure tank in for us in the house. So I talked to him and I said, Eric, what do you think the problem might be? So he said, well, maybe it's the nipple in the little tube between the line coming in and the pressure switch on the tank. Check that out first. That's something you can do yourself. You don't need to pay me to come out and take a look at it. So he walked me through that process of turning the power off, disconnecting the power from the switch, removing the switch, and checking that small tube where the pressure comes up into the pressure switch to kick the water well on and off as needed. We keep our pressure between 40 and 60 psi, so when the water pressure gets down below 40, the switch kicks, sends 220 volts of power down to the pump, which is a submersible pump, 70 some feet into that water well, pumps the water into the house, builds up pressure to about 60 psi, and then the switch kicks off, turning off the power to the pump, and then we've got pressure in our water system in our house. So we checked that pressure switch first and it was perfectly fine. The pressure tank was working properly. So I talked to Eric and I said, can you come out and take a look sometime? It's probably something down in the well. It doesn't seem to be the pressure tank or the switch. So drilling, especially things like water wells, is another one of those skill sets kind of becoming a lost art. Thankfully, Eric took over a business from his father and his grandfather. He's very knowledgeable, but it's harder and harder to find people that know what they're doing when it comes to drilling or maintaining a water well. So when Eric came out this morning, he talked me through what he was going to check. He checked the pressure switch, and what he found was he was reading the amp draw from the water well whenever the pump kicked on, and the pump was kicking on and drawing way too many amps and then timing out. So it's a pretty good indication that the well pump was the problem. It overheats as it's pumping, and then it has to time out, and then it kicks back on, and the problem is it can't keep up the pressure with the demand that's needed for our house. So he brought his tools out here, and let's take a look at what we've got done so far.
So like I said, our well is not very deep. It's about 74 feet. You want the pump to sit about 5 feet off the bottom of the well. So you're looking at all this pipe, roughly 60 some feet long, that brings the water from deep down in the well, 70 feet, up to a point inside the well. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. No. But underground, there's a spot where the water leaves from the well, is buried over to the house, and goes into our basement to the pressure tank. So Eric brought this tool out that pulls all the hose and the pump up out of the well. And as he was pulling it, he explained to me what we were seeing. So this is the pipe that he connected just to pull. This is the part that's buried underneath the ground and sends the water out that 90, buried into the house. So then you've got this tubing that the water comes up from the pump. And he was explaining to me that all this area that's black means that that's never underwater, so the water doesn't fill up that deep into the well. So we'll keep following the tubing. Then you can see this area that's got the iron in it. We do have iron in our water. We have a Culligan softener system that takes the iron out of that water when we use it. But all this red means that the water rises and falls to that level. So the water comes into the well, can fill up to that level typically, and then it gets drained down below it. You've got that red for a while. And then once you see here that it stops, the rest of this was all wet. This was constantly underwater. So that was probably 30 feet until we got to the red part. 10 feet or so of the red stuff. And then the remainder to the pump was all submersed in water. So it seems we still have a good water level in our water well. I was worried that maybe it was getting dry,
because it has been an extremely dry fall here in Northwest Pennsylvania. In fact, we're under a burning ban for about a month because there's just not enough rainfall to keep the woods wet. The leaves are all highly flammable right now, so it's not a good idea for people to be starting any outside fires. So let's take a look at this submersible pump.
So this is the pump that, like I said, sits about 5 feet up off the bottom of the well. Gets its 220 volts of power when the pressure switch in my basement kicks it on. Sucks water in. Sends it uphill through the tube and then through that union fitting I showed you and into the house. So this pump is our problem. Like I said, this has been buried in the well there for over 20 years. Take a look at it here. There's the type and part number.
So all really good news that the problem is the pump. Yes, it's not going to be cheap to replace that pump and for Eric's labor to do this work, but much better than having to do something with the well if our well were getting dry. Or, you know, what happens sometimes is somebody else in the area will drill a well and they're tapping into the same water table, so sometimes you get less and less water the more wells that are drilled. As far as I know, locally around us within a mile or so, I haven't seen anybody drilling a well, so our well water should still be safe. And like I said, we've got a lot of springs in these woods that water filters down into the ground and helps supply our water well with water. So Eric went to get the new pump and a new O-ring gasket for that part that sends the water sideways, buried under the ground into the house. And then once he gets the new pump, I'll come back out and hopefully catch him putting that new pump onto the bottom of the hose, installing it, and showing you what it's like to have brand new water pump for our house. But that's a little bit of an explanation of how rural water works. Some people have someone come out and kind of determine the best place to drill a well to find water, because you want to find a good supply of water that's good quality and good quantity, preferably without having to drill super deep. Now thankfully our water only main issue is iron in the water, which is very common. Hard water around here is pretty common, so the softener Culligan system in our basement removes that iron and softens the water. So Eric had to go get the pump. He's actually installing 3 pumps and wells today. So he went and bought the pump. He chose a Franklin brand, which he said he's had really good luck with. About 7 years ago, he switched brands to Franklin. Franklin was the company that previously made all the motors on pretty much all the submersible water well pumps. And then they started making the whole pump unit. He liked how they were constantly advancing the better technology, so he has switched to the Franklin pumps. This is a 1/2 horsepower Franklin pump that is now installed in our well. The first one, I looked it up, lasted 24 years. It was not a Franklin brand, but it was a different brand. This one, he said he hopes is just as good. He's been using them for 7 years without any problems. New pumps on, getting ready to go in the well. So that 1/2 horsepower pump is now installed. You can see the well cap is back on, and just wanted to make a note here. If you live in an area where you can find really good people, like Eric Flick in our area is one of those really good people. He's 3rd generation drilling water wells and maintaining them for people like me. So it was actually either Eric's dad or Eric's grandfather that drilled this well for me 24 years ago, and Eric has come out since then to replace our pressure tank and now the pump and the well. Really, it's nice to live in an area where we know the right people to call that you can trust. Our total out the door cost, in case anybody was wondering, for everything that Eric did today was $828. Now, I looked up the Franklin pumps. They can be about $1,500 by themselves. Now, obviously, Eric gets a discount from being a supplier and a contractor, and thankfully, he passes that discount on to us as consumers when he does the work for us. He could very easily charge the retail rate of $1,500 for the pump plus some labor, and we could have been looking at over $1,500 for the work today. But like I said, $828 out the door. It's a skill that not that many people have anymore. We need more people to do tasks like that and to be in careers like that, and Eric does a great job. So thank you to Eric and Flick Drilling for the great work here at the house. I know this isn't the typical type of video we do. There weren't any chainsaws, no firewood, no tractors, no talking about the truck or towing or boating or camping or anything like that. But I wanted to say, as a homeowner here in rural Pennsylvania, for those of you who don't have a water well, kind of the process of how a water well works for giving us water here at our house. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this video informative and entertaining. As always, we appreciate you clicking on the video, giving it a watch, clicking that like button, and leaving a comment. Thanks for the support. Hopefully we'll see you again the next time.